deck. How to combat orange Retribution decks for red style Masteries. Now this Mastery list here, or rather this particular one based on the style we're going with red, is not going to include any advice for red enraged, because at the time of this recording, red enraged is still not usable in any organized play formats. So my apologies, I won't be lending any advice in that area. For our purposes, I'm going to go ahead and start off with the Masteries themselves. Which of the two, Red Ruthless and Red Ascension, would I prefer, and what are their strengths? Well, to be perfectly honest, the the Red Ruthless is more than capable of dealing all the damage it could want. It has a when entering effect that is not readily countered by orange, because of course it's all, before combat. So, that when entering effect is awesome, turning every attack into an anti-anger attack. Pretty darn effective. Paired with red double strike, they can make some really interesting combos, so that even if you're at 0, you're still raising your anger, lowering theirs, and doing a wee bit of damage. It's not a bad move at all. And its copying ability can get you out of a jam, provided you can just line up the right card on your, discard pile, and you don't care about the other card in your hand. It's pretty sweet. So I won't tell you that Red Retribution, or Red Ruthless, can't do the job, because it can. But if I had to put my money on it, I like Red Ascension just a little bit more, and here's why. Because Red Retribution, Orange Retribution can make so much use of every action. It thrives on actions. It always has more actions in combat. That sometimes the only way to keep it from going in their favor is to have the ability to make them skip their next action, which Red Ascension Mastery does with the Mastery power. It can give you an ability to get off 2 actions and hopefully knock them to 0 or knock their anger out or do something, devastating to slow them down. So for me, I prefer Red Ascension for that one reason. Otherwise, Red Ruthless is extraordinarily effective in a pure beatdown capacity. The next methods, like we said, we can employ in terms of the 2 different builds. You can kind of have I think the word here to think of is like a anger up deck. You're just speeding for MPPV as fast as possible, like Red Ascension Trunks. Or you could have a beatdown center deck that's trying to do, the best to beat them down while reducing their anger. One way to handle that with either build, either Red Retribution or Red Ascension, is to utilize, Red Style's Mondo crit capability. It's pretty awesome. For instance, you can pressure on their anger, and to the point where you can always keep another crit in your hand, like with orange knee or red knee strike. You know what I'm talking about? Knee lift, pardon me. Red knee lift. That lets you be able to, crit and crit again and crit again, and you can keep them pressured at 0 with each action that you have. So it's as if every single thing you do is double dutied. Give you an example, red shoulder grab, consistent critical damage. Pair that with a handful of red double strikes, and everything is lowering their anger, doing critical damage, and raising your anger all in one shot. Like with Red Ruthless. So the means are there, and speaking of which, if you were to go with this, like we said, every card that produces crits, like Red Flame, I can't think of it, but it's the red setup that lets you use a critical damage, rejuvenate, that one. I was looking at that one and thinking, wow, with all of Red's built-in crits on so many different cards, just, boom, use a critical damage effect. You could even run Dragon Balls for anti-setup, de-leveling, any of that stuff, and never have to worry about being able to get it back. Your opponent would actually be unwise to try to take a Dragon Ball from you for a critical damage effect, because they know you're just going to steal it right back. It's one of the reasons that old Red Enraged Cooler was so effective back in the day. Now, besides using, like we said, Mondo critical damage and crit pressure, which Red Style can pump out, and like we said, if you guys want to know more about that one, you'd probably want to look up a few deck lists for Red Enraged, and then just sort of adapt them more for Red Ruthless in mind, or Red Ascension. Like we said, if you want to go in this direction for just Mondo crit pressure, you can forego trying to level yourself and simply hold them down and keep them in place and batter them with physical attacks. Because if you can keep them from leveling, you can effectively stage lock them and then just be able to whittle away at their deck. If you wanted to know, another option that you have is trying to get anything and everything that forces them to skip actions. Like we said, the Red Ascension Mastery, Red Explosion, etc. Basically assemble every red card that forces them to skip an action, trying to keep them away from trying to pump out action after action after action before you have a chance to intervene, lower their anger, etc. Another deck tech regular that's going to make your way into this one is Red Relaxation times 3 in every deck. You can say, but wait, it's a setup. It's limited usability in a red deck, especially an all-offensive red deck. What you're saying is not untrue. But I'll tell you that there is a couple of situations in which Red Relaxation is the sole way to win a game against Orange Retribution. Let me give you a scenario and see if this don't sound familiar. How many times late in the game will you go against an Orange Retribution Vegeta or one of the other ones, and they've already got 3 anger, and they're going to go ahead and MPPV as their first action using the Mastery? You probably have guessed that you're not really all that able to stop that you're not equipped, generally speaking, to stop an instant MPPV on their first action. What are you going to do? It turns out Red Relaxation is the only way to actively prevent this, because they need an action. You'll actually crit their anger down to 2 before they get their first action, and voila, you have found a way to keep them from being able to do it in one action. The only way to prevent that. Also, the critical damage effect will, still be useful on lower levels. Still useful if you end up going with a Dragon Ball build, the Dragon Balls themselves. So I can't recommend it enough. I would say I've derailed enough plans with Red Relaxation that I say I shan't ever build a red deck without it again. Another particular strategy you might run into for red is, I know it's going to sound kind of strange because I think we all got accustomed to red being, very physical oriented, and then orange's ability to deal with lots and lots of offense from red physicals. You'd be right. It means that in a build that you build for this, you're probably going to want to go ahead and do a lot of, hybrid builds. You say, what does that mean? It means to go ahead and add cards like Red Static Shot and Red Energy Blast in order to add in some life card damage, make use of the power stages, which you're going to have oodles of because Orange isn't going to ever do stage damage, and in the case of Red Static Shot, reduce their ability, or actually take away their ability to have endurance for the remainder of combat. So should you be able to knock them to 0, Orange's significant endurance is not going to be going back into that overall theme we were talking about. The Red Energy Blast, that's a 3 of right there, because think about it for a second. It's an energy attack, so they're less prepared for it, and it banishes a drill, keeping with our overall theme of banishing instead of destroying. So those are my main, my apologies. I'm missing one other card that can work into just about both of those equally well, both of those masteries. One last card that I have seen wrecked me. I hate to say it, I had a deck that never attacked. It was my Black Wheelo. I fought a red deck, and I found out, wow, he can cripple me with 1 card. And anybody want to take a guess before I say it? One of Red's when entering cards? It's Red Restriction. Red Restriction, of course, is used one of those when entering combat effect cards. So it's an event, so in some environments it might be hard to use, but basically it says use when entering combat. Players can only attack or pass their actions as combat. Draw 2 cards and discard a card from your hand. That was from the old days of Red and Rage, where discarding cards could be very useful. I would say that it can get you an extra card when entering combat and locks them out of the mastery and out of the drills for the remainder of combat. Think hard about that for a second. If your opponent cannot use those, they will actually have to rely on the cards they've drawn in order to be able to do anything in combat. This is going to be key. I can't say it's enough. 3 red restrictions, 3 red shoulder grabs, 3 red relaxations, 3 red static shots, 3 red energy blast. You're going to have a good time against Orange. It's not going to be like it was before. And if you threw in some of those non-style ones that we talked about earlier, I don't think you'll have as much trouble with them as you might think. Also, to answer a question that somebody left on the channel, should you use Wall Breaker if you're fighting Red Ascension Trunks? The answer is yes. Yes, you would. You see, Red Ascension Trunks is awesome because it's, levels up so doggone fast and is such a freight train, it's just so hard to stop. It's one of those 5 actions and he's MPPV'd. What I'll get at, though, is with fighting Red Ascension, should you use Wall Breaker? Yes. because he doesn't have a lot of means to deal with getting rid of attached cards. You might think, oh, what about Trunk Smash? What about it? It's 3 cards out of 60. He might have it in his hand, he might not. If you cheat him out of 1 combat, that might give you just enough ground to be able to get his anger back down low enough to get to a manageable level. So in other words, yes, use wall breakers in a red deck. There's very little to lose from doing so. So go ahead and stay tuned for more styled strategy to come in further episodes of Decked.